Thank you very much for this invitation. I feel very honored. And of course, Tamara Toledo and Cecily O, with whom I have an exchange preparing this presentation. I will share my screen and with a PowerPoint in order to show you some images of the exhibitions, particularly the exhibition I will talk today more about. Of course, thank you, the Latin American and Canadian art projects, for supporting these kind of presentations and exchanges. Then in 2018, the last presentation of the exhibition Radical Women in Latin American Art 1960-1985 closed at the Pinacoteca de Sao Paulo. This exhibition I co-curated with Cecilia Fajardo Gil. I know that she presented it before in a previous talk. This exhibition opened a new vision of Latin American art and provide an account of its shortcomings or limitations at the same time. The exhibition was a result of 7 years of research. We focus on a historical and chronological period between the 60s and 85 because we understood that it was necessary to address a moment about which only a few famous names such as Licia Clark, Marta Minuchin, Gego, or Ana Mendieta were known. During one of the exhibition tours I did to curators of Tate Modern, highly specialized in Latin American art, they expressed that of the more of 120 artists included in the exhibition, they only knew 25. Undoubtedly, the exhibition brought many unknown artists and works. We began this project in 2010 in the most absolute isolation. Almost all of our colleagues, curators, especially men, but also women, considered this exhibition unnecessary since they said female artists had already been recognized. The exhibition proposal was also disqualified as outdated. When in 2015, the topic began to be relevant, we should remember the increasing re-emergence of the feminist movement since 2015, particularly in Argentina with the Ni Una Menos movement and in the US with the Me Too movement, then the exhibition was objected as focused in a topic that was on fashion. However, when the exhibition opened in 2017, when Trump went into the presidency, his misogyny and verbal expressions acted as the context of the support the exhibition received from the press, the public, and our colleagues. Unexpectedly, the exhibition was a success. When we had to establish the central concept of our exhibition, we define it with the phrase, the political body. The body is the theme repeated throughout all the sections of the exhibition. The body rediscovered and enjoyed, but also the body tortured, murdered. The word political refers not only to the relationship between body and political events, but also to the administration of meaning and to its reconceptualization, the reconceptualization of the body. In this exhibition, it is evident that female body, that in the long history of art, has been approached from an external patriarchal view, from the immobile eye that generally represent the body naked, codifying it for male desire. That unique and patriarchal eye had been set in motion, had been internalized, and was navigating the body and exploring it. The unified female body had exploded into thousands of fragments that assumed diverse and radically different meanings as splinters of bodies, sensibilities, and concepts. These works give us a sense of a different knowledge of new languages and affects. When we look at the images in the exhibition, we can appreciate that the installation seeks to make visible the relations between the works and the common problems that from different countries these works addressed. One strong theme, fear and resistance, show the relationship between artists who live under surveillance regimes during dictatorships in countries such as Colombia, Argentina, Chile, Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay. The different themes in which was the exhibition organized also allow us to approach the simultaneities of artistic feminisms in Argentina, Mexico, Colombia, the community of Latino and Chicana artists in the United States, and they shared concerns about the body and its meaning, uses, or social representations. When Radical Women closed, I began to analyze the problems of the exhibition concerning the representation of race, ethnicity, and the processes of empathy the exhibition introduced. The scarce presence of Afro-Brazilian or indigenous artists indicated the low representation they had had in Latin American art. However, were issues that were not absent in the exhibition. The piece that the audience has to confront as soon as they arrive to the show was the following performance by Victoria Santa Cruz, recorded by the Odin Theater in 1975.
Tenía 7 años apenas 7 años. ¿Qué 7 años? No llegaba a 5 siquiera. De pronto unas voces en la calle me gritaron ¡negra! 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 ¿Soy acaso negra? Me dije. ¡Sí! ¿Qué cosa es ser negra? ¡Negra! Yo no sabía la triste verdad que aquello escondía. ¡Negra! Y me sentí negra. ¡Negra! Como ellos decían. ¡Negra! Y retrocedí. ¡Negra! Como ellos querían. ¡Negra! Yo odié mis cabellos y mis labios gruesos y miré apenada mi carne tostada y retrocedí. ¡Negra! Y retrocedí. ¡Negra! 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 Y pasaba el tiempo y siempre amargada seguía llevando a mi espalda mi pesada carga. Y cómo pesaba. Me alacé el cabello, me polvé la cara y entre mis entrañas siempre resonaba la misma palabra. ¡Negra! 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 Hasta que un día que retrocedía y que iba a caer. ¡Negra! 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 ¿Qué? ¿Y qué? ¡Negra! ¡Sí! ¡Negra! ¡Soy! ¡Negra! ¡Negra soy! ¡Negra! ¡Sí! ¡Negra! ¡Soy! ¡Negra! ¡Negra soy! Yo y en adelante no quiero laciar mi cabello. ¡No quiero! Y voy a reírme de aquellos que por evitar, según ellos, que por evitarnos algún sinsabor, llaman a los negros gente de color. ¿Y de qué color? ¡Negro! ¿Y qué lindo suena?
We have to thank Miguel Lopez for the introduction of the work of Victoria Santa Cruz, which is a Peruvian African performer, which it's very well known in Peru, but as an artist that came from dance and performance, connected more with theater than with art. What we did with Cecilia was to introduce this work on the museum for the first time. And it was really, this introduction was fundamental for the exhibition because it was a very strong way to introduce the issues and the presence of Black women artists in the exhibition. She is a mestizo artist, but she is not at all a marginal artist in the field of performance. Through her practices, she referred to ancestral memory and articulate a method to recover this memory through internal rhythm. Then the sound, the movements, the articulation, the story she let us know in just 3 minutes about what happened when she was a child and how she elaborated a resistant position was set at the beginning of the exhibition, was a very strong way to involve the audience into the topic of the exhibition from empathy, from a very emotional connection. It's necessary to say that also she was a professor at the Canon University in Princeton, and she said, referring to the problems she had to face in order to obtain this job, she said the following: I was a woman, a Latin American woman, and a Black woman. I just lacked leprosy. Then it was a very difficult process. Then through this video, the rhythm, the visual, the narrative, we installed this topic in the exhibition, provoking a very emotive and emotional connection. Then who didn't know about what she was telling, who didn't feel empathy with the story, now the audience was transformed by the emotionality of this video. The powerful questions that raised for me were, or could be formulated through 2 questions. Why have not there been great Black artists in Latin America? And why have not there been great Indigenous artists in Latin America? Of course, many things have changed in the world and in the world of art since 2017. And through the curatorial projects I will present now, I really, through the process of awareness that the exhibition produced in terms of how it was the configuration of art in Latin America, I look to have an intervention in the construction, in the structure of the field of art. In 2018, when it was opening the last presentation of Radical Women at the Pinacoteca de Sao Paulo, I received a call with an invitation to present a proposal for the biennial number 12 of Porto Alegre, Biennial of Mercosur, that the directors of the foundation that support the biennial wanted to be focused on Latin American women artists, or women in general. For me, this proposal opened the possibility, the fantastic opportunity to investigate Afro-Latin American and Indigenous presence in contemporary, modern, more contemporary Latin American art. Then beyond the time frame of Radical Women, 1960-85, I had the possibility to investigate what was happening in the present time. The project I presented, Feminines, Visualities, Actions, and Affects, was selected by the committee, and there began the journey of the biennial. Let's look first where Porto Alegre, Brazil, is located. This map allows us to understand, in part, the relationship between geography and the history of slavery in Brazil. Porto Alegre is a city of transatlantic dialogue. It is a harbor. It is a city of water through which millions of slaves entered to Brazil. They enter, of course, through Rio de Janeiro, but many through Porto Alegre. It was a very important area in the south, producing mainly salted milk, which is a central food among the slaves, which was. The biennial was to be held around the historic square, Alfândega Square. Alfândega means customs, the place where everything that entered and left the region was controlled. Then all these buildings are around the square, and many of the activities were planned for the square with a lot of performance. The first thing was to define the curatorial team. And then Igor Simoes was the educational curator, is a scholar and curator from Porto Alegre. Dorota Bixel specialized in Peruvian and Ecuadorian art, and also in the Eastern countries art. And Fabiana Lopez specialized in Afro-Brazilian, Afro-Caribbean, and African art. And these are some points that we took in consideration as part of the curatorial platform. No, the center of the agenda of the biennial was the friction in democratic culture. We have to think that when this exhibition was planned, it was the moment before Bolsonaro was elected, but it was clear that something could be happening with the elections. Then I conceived the biennial to be focused on the concept of how is construct democratic culture. But it was also, well, of course, we were very focused on Afro-Latin American artists, but we want to create this or to work on this idea of participation from the concept of difference understood as multiplicity and not like separation, a concept that we were taking from Denis Ferreira da Silva. Then part of the platform of the biennial was a leap from exclusive binary logics of gender, race, or class, participation from the concept of difference, and to create through the biennial a sensitive contract, an area for exchange of visualities, actions, and affects that allow confirming the richness of democratic life without avoiding its complexity. Then the center of the biennial was a feminine presence, but also the concept of how we can construct a more democratic culture. Here is the list of countries participating, 24 countries, 70 artists. And here the pictures of the artist. 15 days before traveling to Porto Alegre for installing the biennial in the space, the situation at COVID worsens and radicalizes. On March 11, the World Health Organization declared COVID a pandemic. The situation was extreme and confusing for us. It was Wednesday. On Friday, March 13, I called the director of the biennial, of the foundation of the biennial, and a decision had to be taken. It was urgent that artists who were in Porto Alegre working on research processes of the work, such as Duana Guavira from Zimbabwe, return to their country. She was living at this moment in Belgium. And it was also essential to cancel all the trips of the artists who were arriving that weekend. I wasn't able to travel either. This weekend was the last that worldwide airports were open. If we didn't make those decisions, artists would stay in Brazil for not less than 6 months. The dilemma now was what to do next. All the art institutions were closing, while MoMA or the Metropolitan Museums were laying off 40% of their staff, mainly gallery guides and educational staff. I particularly as a chief curator was really concerned that the whole biennial team was not suspended, the contracts were not suspended. At the same time, within the curatorial team, things were not easy. We were discussing where we had to do something or not to do anything. Not to do was a political position. It was to make a kind of strike against the situation in the world, a strike against global capitalism, which we had no doubt had a lot of responsibility for such a crisis. These are, in synthesis, some of the questions we were asking ourselves and some points we had to take care of. Then the question was, when the global spectacle of art becomes, or the situation could be described, when the global spectacle of arts becomes a care of people, persons, and programs. Take care of the team's workshop, take care of the artist's works and resources, take care of the moving from the real space to the screens, take care of the existence of the educational program. And in orange are the questions we did after all the process I will try to describe now. The questions were, what did we lose moving from the real space to the screens? What did we win? And the most important question, do we want to return to the state of the world that we left in March 2020? Now, sounds a bit out of context, these questions, because we know a lot about what happened after. On March 20, I wrote a letter to the artists. We need to ask them how they were doing, and telling them that we were thinking about what to do. It was a very personal letter, and the response we received were extremely emotional. And then we arrived to the conclusion that it was necessary to continue with the biennial, moving it into an online format, design new strategies, devise educational tools. In the context of preventing uncompulsory isolation, when we couldn't go out into the streets, when schools and museums were closed, we needed to imagine an imaginative lab to make the biennial a space for encounters. And well, the Biennial Foundation agreed, and here you have the changes that were experienced before what we were planning to do and what finally happened. The opening happened the same day on April 16, but not in the physical space, but online. And the activities, I will describe now some of the activities we were articulating, and all the educational program and the editorial program. With the advice of the Argentine artist, Gabriela Golder, we designed an instructive that we sent to each artist so that those who wanted to could record a short video with their mobile phone, telling where they were, what they were doing, what work they were going to present at the biennial. Immediately, the short films began to arrive through WhatsApp. We began to upload them on Friday, March 22, when the Zoom was not yet as widely installed as it was later. Really, the beginning of our activities online were very, very fast. These are the testimonies, as you can see today on YouTube. All the platform, all the works of art, all the activities we did are all online. Then it's a biennial that didn't end it in a way. Then the inauguration was the same day, as I said, April 16, but of course we have to hire a new team for making this transition. Here shows a resume of the what we call testimonies or depoimentos in Portuguese, no? That all these short videos can communicate the sensitive moment we were involved in. Then it's interesting because the word affect was in the title of the biennial, and it in this new context became the central word. With the online biennial, we did several things that I think went to the heart of curatorial practice. To the relationship between curatorial practices and care. Let me summarize some of the things I think we get or we were able to do. First, we managed to get the team's contracts not only not suspended, but extended. They were extended 1 month longer than planned, and a new team was hired to the online programming and design. We managed as a second successful the second point we were able to deal with was to manage to get all the artist fees paid, even if it was not a physical biennial. And you can imagine it's not easy to get this agreement with the foundation that support the biennial, because what they wanted was a physical biennial. We, as a third point, we managed to produce 4 digital publications, which are still online. In this very critical moment, we opposed printing. It was a political position in the face of the contamination that the art world also produced, with thousands of luxurious catalogs that often accumulate in warehouses. And we managed to articulate an educational program. This is the cover of the catalog. We also edited online. And these are the propositions that were elaborated with 1,600 educators that were participating on online classrooms to create these propositions for being used in online educational classes. Here, all this program was run by Igor Simoes, the pedagogical curator. And we managed, here are the propositions, no? We managed to make all the works, all the testimonies, and all the publications available online until today. Then something that is important is to go back again to Denise Ferreira da Silva words, because even if I show you pictures of the artists, we didn't include them in the catalog, and we didn't work with percentages of representation. We wanted, the purpose was to include a very strong African descendant artists, African, Latin American, and African diasporic artists in the biennial, but not through percentages, without classifications. We wanted to integrate the works regardless of skin color, although this was the reason why they had historically been excluded. Then let's look at the works of some artists. I will introduce by reading some sections for the catalog text, that it was a text that I conceived in a very personal tone, as if I were making a tour, a guided tour to the audience. In this case, were readers of the whole biennial. The text also sometimes points out the distance between what we imagine and what we were able to do, especially because many works remain as projects that couldn't be presented, of course. At the exhibition entrance, we placed portraits on embroidery shelves. by Rosana Paulino, Brazilian artist, images of faces crossed by seams at the eye, mouth, throat. The entire first gallery was to be dedicated to this Brazilian artist, a point of reference and an educator for a new generations of Black Brazilian artists. Her art analyzes the relationship between science and racism. Her memorial works are based on her family album, which, like so many others throughout the Americas, have its roots in a history of slavery, exploitation, and discrimination that lives on today. Hers, I consider, is a work manifesto. Dana Guavira's project is among those that most strikingly highlights the distance between the experience in the physical space for which the biennial was planned and the reality of the internet. She was investigating Black history in Rio Grande do Sul with Porto Alegre-based specialists in Quilombos, near the city is located. The Quilombos are the areas of emancipation for slaves where they were creating new communities. The project entailed translating her observations, her research of these local Quilombos into drawings with abstract patterns. The dialogue is rife with frictions in relation to the adjacent space, which was the house of Aline Mota's video about a trip from Brazil to Nigeria she did. Her films address the question of her origin and her research into her roots. Bridges over abysses, If the Sea Had Balconies, and Other Fundaments are the titles of a trilogy that tells us a story in images, text, and silences. Aline Mota spent 4 years traveling and filming. She dwelt on the strangeness she felt before the fact of diaspora, the transatlantic trip, and centuries ago, rent affects language, beliefs, traditions, the uprootedness enacted by slavery. What of those centuries all displacements live on? Mota followed her ancestor traces, doing research in newspapers, in family archives, and looking for other materials to reconstruct her life stories, the life stories of her ancestors, the violence of a mestizaje still present as basis of racism in Brazil. Voices, names, stories. She traveled with her white father from Rio de Janeiro to Minas Gerais. She traveled with her Black mother to a coffee plantation in a rural area of the state of Rio de Janeiro. She traveled to Portugal, to Sierra Leone, to Nigeria. She spent 32 days in Lagos, where she felt no less displaced than in Brazil. She said, white in Nigeria, Black in Brazil. I recognize them, but they don't recognize me. I see myself in them. They don't see themselves in me. In water, she looked for connections between languages and cultures. Lagos, Rio, Cachoeira, 3 cities named for water, ties to many stories. She tries to imagine what might have happened if the ocean, instead of being a space of segregation or separation, was a space for communicating again, for crossing these stories. The mirrors in her trilogy cut out faces and landscapes, displays images in the space. The film's immersive experience in the gallery, the voice, images, and mirrors in different settings, as well as the text, take us back and forth between persons and landscapes. How we can unite in these ways that which has been separated, she said. From that contemplative and emotional climate created by the simultaneous videos, we should enter, if the biennial happened, into the work of Andrea Giunta. We have just preliminary sketches of the translucent installation of wire wrapped in cotton fabric that she had planned to produce in this exhibition space on-site with others in a collective process. The work is bound to the femininity of touch and to the quality of softness. The echo of the swing in her film is repeated as a song plays. The filmic record we presented of Janaína Barros, a Brazilian artist, shows her dancing in different parts of the Sao Paulo city, defining the territory she steps on as her territory, appropriating that fragment, this piece of space, a powerful metaphor for the tension between diaspora and territory. When she finished dancing, she focused on her bare feet. What stereotypes regulate the representation of people, of persons? Born in 1990, Shoiri Minasha, who lives between the Dominican Republic and New York, addresses the objectification of the Caribbean, mulatta, and Black woman. The video, Siboney, registers the artist preparing and then executing a performance in which her own body is used to expose a stereotype from which she is not a part, she's part of. In 2014, she used water-based paint to make a mural of exuberant flowers in shades of red, blue, and green. The pattern in the mural makes reference to Hawaiian fabric, the idea of Hawaiian identity, a cliché image for anywhere with beaches and tropical climate. That is a stereotype that combines nature, pleasure, and sex. The work also proposed a dialogue with a painting by José Vela Zanetti, a Spanish Republican exile in Dominican Republic, that contains a fragment of the poem Trópico Suelto, written by Manuel del Cabral in 1907. This artist's painting represents a partially nude dancing woman wrapped in tropical fabrics while a man plays a drum. Both figures are mestizos and both blend into the compact vegetation in which in whose midst appear masks and beads of the Caribbean Sea. The reference to that painting underlines Minasha's performance, wearing a white uniform of the sort worn by maids at hotels. She wraps her body and hair against the mural, getting herself and her clothing wet as she unpaints it. During the action, we hear the Connie Francis version of the song Siboney. In the next gallery, a film by Lorraine O'Grady would have depicted a landscape of hair, a series of images against the sound of birds and cicadas. The register of the performance by Priscilla Resende, a performance she did in Porto Alegre 2 years before the biennial, open online, shows Priscilla wears pale clothing made of raw fabric, while putting soap and water in her hair, she then uses to wash a set of pots and kitchen utensils. The title of the performance is Bombril, and Bombril in Brazil is the name of a brand of steel wool used to clean house, but it is also used as a despective way to refer to Black women's hair. We have also a work by Elo Savoy, also from Brazil, that addresses hair branding as memory, as narrative told by her mother as she makes braid after braid. The biennial proposed a search into the meaning of Black hair articulated by the works of Priscilla Resende, Elo Savoy, and Lorraine O'Grady. A textile by the Colombian artist Juliana Góngora was to be suspended on the upper level of the Foundation Iberê Camargo. For years, Juliana Góngora has made woven fabric from solidified milk. Its threads swam into branches. Light was to be a fundamental component of this work. These effects render more visible by means of iridescence. The work is almost like a shelter in the space through which we move. Everything was like the imagination, how you will feel walking through the biennial works. And in the same space, connecting the idea of textiles, were the Chilean arpilleras, born as a community action and written testimony that reflects the experience of the social process during the dictatorship in Chile from the perspective of women. This making arpilleras is a practice that emerged shortly after the coup d'etat in Chile, when mothers, sisters, wives, and daughters of missing people and political prisoners begin to relate the anxious search of their relatives, expressing themselves through fabrics, thread, and wool. Fabrics, stitching, sutures, knits, these were some of our keywords when conceiving the biennial. Cecilia Vicuña's drawing video text, Semilla, Seeds, narrates her marriage proposal in 1971 to Salvador Allende, Chile's president at the time, in an event she termed the Day of the Semilla, of the seed. We were going to suspend the quipu Cecilia Vicuña was making in minimal, precarious materials. A seminal part of this work was to be sent from the artist's studio to the biennial via express mail, and materials will be provided by different communities in Porto Alegre, will be added to this Vicuña's quipu to shape a fragile form, which she considers a metaphor for natural threats to the Amazonia. Can our indigenous cultures, Latin American indigenous cultures, teach us other ways to understand the relationship between humans and nature, between our bodies and the possibilities of desire? That question is, in a sense, developed by Maruch Santis Gomez, a Tzotzil artist from Chiapas. She began in 1993 to make photographies and to collect phrases or statements from popular culture, from indigenous culture, which condense a knowledge that she felt that was almost disappearing. Then she introduced the photos together with these statements that condense the knowledge for her community, her Tzotzil community in Chiapas, and she introduced these phrases in Spanish, in English, and in Tzotzil. And this question around the knowledge, the important, necessary knowledge that indigenous culture represents for the contemporary issues, problems, is also present in the work by Sebastián Calfuqueo, or Seba Calfuqueo from Chile. Seba was born in 1991, but in Santiago de Chile, but he goes into memories of Mapuche people living in the city of Santiago. In this video, the camera slowly explores and cuts out the faces of those that are interviewed by Seba. This is an archive of the Mapuche diaspora, the diaspora of people, a territory, a nation. Many of them lost the language that the state helped erase, a language that they are studying, like Seba, at the schools in an attempt of restoration and transmission of the language and culture and knowledge of their culture. In the installation in the image and likeness, Seba crosses two archival images from the 1880s. One is a photograph of a young Yagara Indian woman, and the other is an erotic postcard of a white European woman. Nude, Seba, the artist, poses and imitates the body position, and in that replication is interrogating the cultural patterns of representation. Seba formulates a visual question on its own sexual identity through the body's culture that we receive as forms of classification of identities. Seba confronts the supposed naturalness of the indigenous nude and the supposed artificiality of the white nude. By covering his sex, the sex, Seba imitates the modesty of the women in the photographs. I want to end this presentation with the cover of the 4 curatorial projects I was involved between 1917 and 1921, Radical Women, the Biennial, and also an exhibition that I will not talk about this exhibition now, but that I did online at the same time of the Biennial, Rethinking Everything, that it was an exhibition that in 2021 was installed at the Van Gogh space in La Rencontre de la Photographie in Arles, and an exhibition I curated in 2021 for the Centro Cultural in Buenos Aires, When the World Changes. These 4 exhibitions bring together what I realized and thought also during the pandemic. And here are some conclusions. I believe that we were in a limit zone, on an edge from which we could come out better or close during the pandemic. I was certain that artistic thought, as an unregulated zone of thought, as a discourse of thought that does not have to prove anything, was crucial in that moment of an uncertainty. We needed artistic thought to reimagine the world and to change the structurally white, elitist, reductive, and patriarchal art world. I imagine art as a laboratory space where new solutions could be devised, where alternatives could be thought of the state of devastation of the planet to its exhaustion, to the division of rich and poor, to the processes of separation, discrimination, marginalization. The indigenous communities could allow us to think of an integrated relationship between humans and nature. The works of Maruch Santis Gomez and the work of Seba give us a generous access to specific knowledge. The art world during the pandemic and after the pandemic certainly reacted. The year of the pandemic produced a shift in the artistic field. The context marked by Black Lives Matter drove criteria of inclusion and research of cultural forms and economies that propose another relationship between humans and nature. Biennials and exhibitions have intensively integrated art made by Afro-descendant artists, by indigenous artists. In recent years, there has been an institutional and curatorial shift that have had an impact on these big scenarios of art in museums collections and in the art market. How has this incorporation came about? To what extent is it the result of active institutional action, or does it respond to the need to renew the curatorial and artistic market? Has the presence of women artists, artists of non-binary identity, Afro-descendants, indigenous, managed to transform the canon of Latin American art? I let these questions open. And another question I ask myself, for example, when I look at this photograph by Florencia Levy, an Argentinian artist that I included in the exhibition Rethinking Everything, a photograph of a radioactive lake in Mongolia. Then the other question is, did we come out of the pandemic better? Did the world take advantage of the opportunity it had of rethinking everything in a moment in which the world was changing? Were we able to take advantage of the knowledge, the richness of feminism as an alternative thought